welcome to the Flame and Fiber podcast. My name is Barbara. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Diva S. And I want to say welcome to my new subscribers. Welcome back to everyone who's been here before. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast, and thank you so much for all the kind messages and comments and the likes and the subscribes. Dennis has heard about every one of you new subscribers, and so I just want you to know you're very, very welcome here. And I know a lot of you came because you heard about me on other podcasts, maybe Chevy Rell's podcast. Thank you, Chevy Rell. Chevy Rell stuff, or Leslie's podcast, Not Quite Enough Yarn. Hey, Leslie. Or other places, maybe the Mean Girls, because they mentioned me too, because I'm working on an exploration station, just like they showed. So, hi, girls. Anyway, however you found me, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. This one is going to be somewhat different because I did some lamp working. I actually made a lamp working video, which I was thinking was going to be a whole separate episode, like a mini episode, except that I didn't edit it and I didn't put it up. So maybe I won't talk so much today, and my current plan is to put it at the end of this podcast. So if you're interested in lamp working, which is the flame part of the Flame and Fiber podcast, I have lamp working to show you. I made some stitch markers and a bead and talked about it while I was making those things. So hopefully you'll find that interesting, and if you don't, I'll put it at the end and you can completely skip it, and that would be perfectly fine too, because this really is a knitting fiber podcast with only very, very occasionally some lamp working. So I will start by saying we have a knit along going on. Leslie of the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast and I are co-hosting a Craft from Your Stash make along. The hashtag is down here. It's Stash Cal 2019. I probably should have said Stash Mal, but I didn't. But it's any crafting that you do with yarn or fiber. Qualifies weaving, spinning, knitting, crochet. If you're doing felted figurines, you're doing hand felting. Needle felting? Needle. That's a needle. Needle felting. Those things, they all qualify. Those rules for the knit along are very simple. If you owned the fiber or the yarn in 2018 and you started the project in 2019, it qualifies. You're crafting from your stash because it's been in your stash at least since last year. Leslie and I both have threads. Yeah, on our Ravelry group forums. The Flame and Fiber podcast has a Ravelry group that I urge you to join, and so does the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. And of course, you can double dip in Leslie's threads and my threads, and any other knit along or craft along that your project qualifies for is fine with us. Multi-dipping, poly-dipping is very much encouraged. I will be pulling a prize from the finished object thread at the end of March. I'm going to pull one quarterly. So I'll pull one at the end of March. It will be a skein of yarn from my stash. And I will also be pulling a prize from the chatter thread, and that will be a pattern, I think, from Ravelry, a Ravelry pattern that's giftable. So that's my plan. That'll be at the end of March. So I'm loving seeing the projects that you're making, and thank you so much for everyone who's participating. It's been so much fun to see what you're doing and hear about your stash. I'm on a yarn no buy year, so I haven't gotten any new yarn. Actually, I didn't get any new yarn after October, I think, was the last time I got new yarn. So because I have a huge, beautiful stash that I want to knit out of. I mean, everything I have is wonderful. I want to knit with it. So that's my plan. I will start by talking about my knitting And I'm sure other things will come up while I'm doing that. I haven't done a ton of knitting. I've been in a bit of a funk, actually since the new year pretty much. And I don't know what that's all about. It's not typical for me. I'm an extrovert and normally I'm feeling pretty okay. So I don't know what this is all about, but I'm feeling like it's getting better. But I say that every time I'm podcasting this year because, you know, once I start feeling better, then I do a podcast. It's been 3 weeks since my podcast and I just wasn't feeling it last week. Plus, I've been in a little bit of a knitting funk, so I didn't knit a lot. And I think the reason for that is I haven't been knitting on Sammy's sweater. I knit a sweater for Isabel, which I showed you last time, which is still here because I haven't done a thing with it. It's a beautiful sweater, the Dover fell. I haven't done anything with the zipper because, and I started Sammy's and I only got about that far. But my granddaughters live in Florida. It's like 75 degrees where they live. They're never going to wear these sweaters. So, and I think it's a mistake when you're in a little bit of a knitting funk to do the same sweater twice right in a row. So I only got that far on Sammy's. I will continue working on it. I will finish it and they will get it. I have made them in sizes big enough that they can wear them next year. And so if it's chilly enough next year sometime, they'll have a sweater. But it is a little hard to keep up the enthusiasm when you know they're not going to wear the sweater. That's my problem. They tend to run a little warm anyway. They don't get chilly like I do. They're like, Nana, I'm not cold. Well, Nana's cold. Put on a sweater. You know. But they're in Florida and their parents don't get cold either. So I just have this idea that I'm not going to really wear the sweaters much. So I stopped working. So I wasn't working on Sammy's sweater. But then I felt guilty that I wasn't working on Sammy's sweater. So I wasn't working on anything because I was in a little bit of a knitting funk. But I'm feeling better and I've been knitting and I've been enjoying my knitting. So I'm going to talk about my knitting. I have one finished object, which I do not have with me. I will put a picture here. This is my dad, his Bigfoot. He called it his Bigfoot. Now, I don't know why. It didn't look any bigger than the other foot. The other foot's a little wider. I don't know. But he tried it on after I wove in the ends. And so that's him wearing his sock, which he really likes. We were checking to make sure it fit him before, you know, I had just woven in all the ends from the stripes. Now, here's another picture of the two together, and you can see there's a stitch marker on that sock, which I realized later that I left on the sock. So he's got a little sock jewelry on his, sock. That stitch marker is where I was in my last podcast, when I podcast last. I had just started, I had gotten about, 4 inches? Down the cuff. I was making it 2x2 rib the whole way because my dad has swelling issues and, you know, so I made it 72 stitches, 2x2 rib the whole way. And I did a Vanilla is the New Black heel, which I really like it's a comfortable heel for me. It's a roomy heel and it's easy to knit 2 at a time. So I really, it's becoming a little bit my go-to heel, I have to say. And every time I put on a pair of socks that I've used that heel, I'm like, oh, this is why I like this heel. So that's what I did. But I was only about 4 inches along in my last podcast, and I was talking about my intentions for this sock. My dad wanted a longer leg, and but I knit this out of Patton's Croy. And let's see, what color? Cascade Colors, it was called. So I knit this out of Patton's Croy. This is the first time I've ever used Patton's Croy. And after the podcast, my friend Diane, hi Diane, and Jerry, hi Jerry, both warned me that I was probably not going to be able to knit tall socks with Patton's Croy because it turns out Patton's Croy is like a sport weight and you only get about 350 yards in a skein. 350 yards. Yeah, 350 yards in the 2 skeins. Because it's a 50-gram ball. 175 yards in each one, something like that. But anyway, so people have found that they have not been able to knit tall socks with Patton's Croix, which I didn't know. Now you'll see on this picture that stitch marker is how far I had knit. That was my progress keeper from my last podcast. You'll notice that right after that, I started striping in stripes. I used Cascade Heritage in the black, I don't know what its real color is, Cascade Heritage sock, which is much thinner. It's not a sport weight. It's even probably a light fingering, but I didn't worry about it. I made sure that the heel was out of the Patton's Croix, and I just put in some stripes because I wanted more length. And I ended up with a very, very tiny bit, like a yard of the Patton's Croix after finishing those socks in each ball, about a yard in each ball. So I used up almost every inch of the Patton's Croix. And he loved the socks. My mother thought they were wonderful. So he was very happy with them. I had, let me tell you, a few ends to weave in because I cut the yarn rather than carrying it up for the different stripes because I wasn't sure what the stripes were going to look like. So anyway, I had a lot of ends to weave in. Let me tell you. So that's my finished object, and I got those done in the nick of time. We had an appointment that we were going to, and I was going home straight from the appointment, and I made us a little bit late for the appointment so I could weave in my last end. So those are not blocked. They won't be blocked. But he liked them. He couldn't even wear them because I was still working on them when he walked out the door, but hopefully he's been wearing them. He again declared them very warm, which is true. That's why I wear mine. This is the second winter that I've worn my hand knit socks every day. I haven't worn commercial socks this winter. I did wear like knee-high stockings in some dress shoes. That was it. But I mean, my everyday socks I have been wearing. In fact, I gave away almost all the socks that I own that I didn't make myself. Because I just wear my socks. And I'm really happy with it. So anyway, thank you, Diane and Jerry, for your advice. I took it right away, and that worked out great. I had to add, I think, 5. I don't. Picturing it in my head, I think there are 5 stripes that are almost, probably 5/8 of an inch each. So that made a big difference in the length that I was able to get from that yarn, and I really, really appreciate that. So that's my only finished object, but I did get that done in time and was able to give it to my dad, and he really appreciated it. So my works in progress, I did not show you my exploration station in my last podcast because I hadn't really worked on it. And I was feeling a little worried because my exploration station, Pearl, this is put your needles in there so your knitting doesn't come off. Luckily, it doesn't matter that she bit the end of it. My exploration station was my entry into the New to You Mal, which was a knit-along that ended on Valentine's Day that was sponsored by like 15 podcasts. Earth Tones Girl, Frame and Fiber, Chevy Rouse Stuff, Crafty Toads. Who else do I watch? That was, Cocktail Hour at the Coop, which they're the ones who started the whole thing, and they're the podcast that I discovered because of that, and really like Two Sisters. And so this was my entry into their make-along, and the thing that was new to me was the brioche. So this was the first time I did brioche, but I hadn't done the brioche yet. I was stuck, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta knit this brioche before Valentine's Day or I'm a jerk, because I already entered into their knit along. So here is my exploration station. The yarn is Spirit Trail Fiberworks yarn, and these are the colors that I was inspired in Barcelona. And I really love the sections where they're together. I really love them. I'm not sure about these short row sections. They feel a little blocky to me, but I do love each color individually, and I do think they go. So I think I'm going to end up pretty happy with this exploration station. I certainly hope so. But anyway, so I was right here at this blue line the last time you saw this. So I got my I did my brioche, and I don't know if you can see those white lines in there. Those are my lifelines. I use dental floss for lifeline. So I put in a lifeline right before I started my brioche because I had never done brioche. I watched Stephen West did a brioche video when this pattern came out, and so I watched his video. The lifelines are making the knitting funny, but it's okay. So I watched his video in which he said you should practice on something besides your exploration station just so you feel comfortable. Did I do that? No. I do not always take the good advice that I am given. So I didn't do that. And so I was working on my brioche. And I got to about where this lifeline is. And I found myself trying to figure out how I can put those mistakes on the back instead of on the front. And then I thought, wait a minute. You don't want to have big mistakes in your brioche, even if they're on the back. So I tore it back to my lifeline, which I had put in right before I started. So which is kind of a pain in the neck because this row of knitting, the last row of blue, is not that easy to pick up. And when I take my lifelines out, I'm going to be very careful and make sure that I haven't dropped a stitch and that kind of stuff. I mean, I was pretty careful to make sure that I got all the stitches, but you never know. You never know. So I'm always careful when I take out lifelines to make sure that I haven't inadvertently dropped a stitch, because you don't, it won't drop past the lifeline, but as soon as you take out the lifeline, there you go. So I tore it back and I redid it, and I do not have any obvious mistakes. If I have a mistake, it was not obvious to me on my brioche, but every 4 or 5 rows I put in a lifeline. You can see I did a lifeline, quite a few lifelines, because brioche. I mean, I'm a brand new briocher. This is it. This is all the brioche I've done. I was able to sort of figure out where I went wrong, like if I didn't put the yarn over shawl, as he calls it, and that kind of thing. I was able to figure out that's what I did wrong and able to fix that. But as I went along, when I realized I was good, let me put a lifeline. And actually, the brioche turned out to be, sometimes it's not that easy to knit into the row that has the lifeline, but I didn't find any trouble on the brioche. So there's my brioche with lots of lifelines, and I will be careful when I take those out. And then the next section is slip stitches, mosaic knitting. And I got to tell you, I really, really enjoyed the mosaic knitting part. I really enjoyed the mosaic knitting on the roulotte shawl by Chanel Wu that I did for a test knit that came out last October. That has several sections of mosaic knitting that I really, really love, and I enjoyed knitting it. And I really enjoyed knitting this mosaic knitting panel too. So I may be looking for more patterns that have mosaic knitting in it. I know there are a couple of patterns that have yoke patterns that are not color work. They're actually mosaic knitting that I might take a look at, although I do want to do color work as well. But I really enjoyed the mosaic knitting. So I have a couple more. I'll show you my picture. Well, actually, I don't know if I printed the picture. I didn't. Sorry. Because I had a Xerox it. This is out of my book, Wes Knits Best Knits, has all his shawls, and that's where I have this pattern from. So I am there are 2 more sections, Nothing But Knit, he calls it, and Chevron Shenanigans, which is the, presumably the border at the bottom. So those are the 2 sections I have to go. I really did enjoy it. Once I sat down to think about it and learn how to do the brioche, I enjoyed doing the brioche. It is squishy. My gauge is really big on this. I think he calls for a size 6 needle. I'm using a size 8. In the past, I've gone up quite a few needle sizes because I have been in the past a tight knitter, but I'm a very loose brioche knitter. It felt like I was really loose, and I'm not so sure that I'm still a tight knitter, so I need to be more careful about that. The last couple sweaters I have knit, I have been right on gauge for what the pattern called for, which never happened to me before. So I think I'm maybe loosening up my knitting, kind of, sometimes. Anyway, I think this is going to be nice and big. The colors, so this is, as I said, Spirit Trails Fiberworks. I'll show you their, I will show you their label. Oh, see, I wrote on this. Vortex is the gray. Vortex is the gray. And Ruby Slippers is the red. Oh, there's a shocker. The red. Very tonal. I love the colors. Scrimshaw is the gold. And Hannah Lee is the navy blue, the dark blue. And the dark blue is what the border will be. So my expiration station is coming along. Well, see, now I really love it when I see it on my little tiny phone. Oh, good, because I wasn't sure, but I think adding the sections where the colors are combined also helps. Love this yarn. Oh my gosh. It is 75% superwash merino, 15% cashmere, and 10% bombyx silk. So gorgeous. So this is the only time I've used Spirit Trails, but I really love it. So I will continue working on that. I'm on to the next blue section, which is just 2 rows that delineates the 2 sections. So I was in kind of a knitting funk, and I just wanted to knit, and I didn't want to think about it, and I was at the heel of my sock for my dad, so I didn't want to think about it, so I didn't want to do the heel. So that day, Joji Locatelli published this Odyssey. It's a DK shawl, and it is a free pattern that she is offering free on Ravelry, and she says it will be free forever. This is her gift to the Ravelry community to say thank you for the support. It is a 3-color shawl, and it is DK. Now, one of the and this is me starting it. This is just indicates that's the front. Since it's a garter stitch, it's hard to tell which one's the right side and the wrong side. That's the right side. So my stash, one of the things in my stash is that I really have been wanting to knit and trying to figure out things to knit is this Indicida DK. Dennis and I went to Peru in 2015. And there is a market called the Indian Market in Lima, where they have all kinds of beautiful things. If you want to buy sort of handcraft, you know, sort of Peruvian handcrafts, this is the place to do it. And things, you know, things that, you know, that are llama themed and pisco sour themed and all kinds of stuff. So we bought a few things there. We bought some really beautiful little slip-on shoes for Isabel, her Peru shoes, which she loved. They had all wonderful colors. But that's the place where you can find some amazing alpaca sweaters. But they also sold yarn, and Odyssey to DK is the yarn they had. It is the only yarn I found the whole time I was in Peru. I did not find a yarn shop, which I'm sure they have them. But I bought at least five colors, and I got 10 balls of each one. I filled my suitcase with this DK alpaca yarn, and I love it, and it is so soft and is so lovely, but you can't make a sweater out of this. I don't know how those sweaters hold up, the ones you buy in Peru. I didn't buy one. And I'm not knitting a sweater with this alpaca. So I bought a whole lot of it. And, you know, I did make a shawl that I gave to my mother. One of the first Shawl Society shawls by Helen Stewart was a DK shawl. It was 3 colors, I think, at least 3, maybe 2. I made that shawl and I loved it. And I gave it to my mother and she does not use it. I may take it back because it makes her feel like an old lady. She'll be 87 on her next birthday. Oh, it's a real grandmother thing, you know. I'm like, okay, Ma, you're a great grandmother and you're 87, but whatever. And she's always cold. Anyway, I'm not taking it back. So I decided, DK 3 color, these are my 3 colors that I am going to make the Odyssey shawl out of. So I started it and I didn't get very far. But it was knit back and forth. I mean, you're adding, you know, you're increasing, so it's you know, that's not much going on when you knit sweaters, shawls before. So this is in the dark gray color. I don't even know. Color number 404. The light gray color is 401, and the natural color is 100. When I got home with all this yarn and put it in Ravelry, I found this yarn in Ravelry, and every single person that has this had this yarn in their stash at that time had bought it at the Indian market in Lima. Or their friend had bought it for them at the Indian market in Lima. I did see it in other sort of touristy shops that sold sweaters, and the sweaters are beautiful. I mean, they're just stunning. And one other shop that sold sweaters also sold this yarn, the exact same yarn. So I did not buy any more there. Okay. So I am going to be knitting the Odyssey shawl. I might wait till I'm, you know, to continue working on, well, I'll continue working on it when I wanna, when I don't wanna think, which, you know, happens to me relatively often, apparently. Not the first time I haven't wanted to think. I mean, you can just look at 2 podcasts ago. What's it called? I don't want to think. So that is sitting in the cutest little dog bag. This is so sweet with the Chinese bowl. Look at this on the bed. The King of Sheba. Aren't these cute? This was a gift from the lovely Karen. She won the grand prize of the year of the sweater from last year, and she sent me this bag. Isn't this adorable? Oh my gosh, look at that face. Thank you, Karen. That was so lovely. Anyway, she made it. So it is a little jammed full, but I have lots of skeins of that Indecita in here. I have 2 of each color, which I think I will need eventually, but it fits. It fits, and thank you so much. That's so sweet. The last thing I've been working on, and I've only been working on it 2 days, but while I was at my parents', I was there, this is Friday, February 22nd. I was there Monday and I came home on Tuesday. I was at my parents' Monday and came home on Tuesday. and I was finishing up my dad's socks, and he says, oh, and my mother was wearing the sweater I made her, not last year for her birthday, but the year before, the Curry Inn, and she, and Daddy says, oh, you know what your mother needs? She needs another layer. She needs a vest. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know if she'll have one this winter. But, you know, what are you going to do? So I looked through the patterns in my library to find what kind of vest patterns I have. And I found a vest pattern in this book, Little Red in the City. And it's this vest pattern by Isola Teague. And it's got this nice cable detail, and it's a you know, it's an over your head. It is not a button-up vest. And I showed it to my mother, and she liked it, and I asked her what color she wanted, and she said black, and I said no. I am not knitting a black vest. I said, Mom, I can't knit it black. Oh, okay, okay. I said, how about gray? And I went out on Ravelry, and I found this yarn in my stash, and I said, how about gray, Mama? This is gray. She said, yeah, gray would be okay, or maybe blue. Luckily, she said, and maybe blue, because this is actually denim and not gray. The picture in my Ravelry looked gray, and I didn't look at what the name of it was called. This is a DK, and that pattern is a worsted. So I thought about what did I have that could go with that, and voila. So these are the yarns I'm holding together. This is Painted Desert. It's 100% superwash wool, and it's quite a light fingering. I don't think it's a lace. Well, that's the other one. The Elite, Elite DK is 50% wool and 50% cotton. 125 yards for 50 grams. But I'm not finding the tag. Oh, that's because I had it in my hand. So this is 437 yards for 100 grams. So this is a fingering weight, but it's in weight. It feels a little bit like a light fingering weight. So I decided to hold those two together and knit this shawl, or this vest, since it was a worsted weight. So I swatched, and this is using a size 7 needle. So this was a size 7 needle, and that's what it calls for in the pattern. And it was supposed to be 20 stitches and 36 rows over 4 inches. Now, this is an easy way to count because these are 5. The ridge to the neck, before the next ridge, there are 3 stitches in between the ridges, so it's easy to figure out whether you're on gauge or not. I was a little bit, actually, with the size 7, my stitches were a little big. I was getting like 18.5 stitches to the 4 inches, and my row gauge was seriously off. And so she says, go down a needle size if your row gauge is off, and that should fix it probably without hurting your stitch gauge, although I don't know how that happens. But so that was done in a size 7, so I just decided, okay, fine, well, I did it in a 6. And this is the back. And you can see the color is varying because of the Painted Desert has, you know, different colors in it, but it's really reading very blue. Here's my cable needle, which I am using. And it's done in pieces, front and back separate, and from the bottom, and then it'll be sewn together, which it works fine because this is reverse stockinette, so I'm just as happy to do it flat. anyway, I'm in the middle of the big cable pattern in the back. And she also does waist decreases. So this is a little smaller now. I'm doing the size 32 for my mom. My mom is very slim, much slimmer than me. And I'm hoping this will fit her. I did make it about an inch longer before I started the cable pattern to have it come down a little lower. And I am really enjoying knitting this. This is 2 knitting sessions for me, counting this morning. And it's just enough. You have to pay attention to do these cables, but not too much. And I like the stripes. I've been sticking my cable needle in there. It looks like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Anyway, so I've started the back. I'm very happy with how it's turning out. I'm enjoying doing that cable pattern. So everything I'm doing is, so here's I had to color code it to figure out what the heck was going on. And I didn't color code the other ones, but I will. But I like the way she does it. She gives you, the basics, and then she gives you a chart that tells you how to fill in the number of stitches based on the size of that you're knitting. So I went through and actually I went through and changed it. I used Friction pen that I could erase because I started doing the 3rd size and started to feel like it was going to be too big, so I went down a size. So I'm doing a size 32-inch bust for my mom, and I think that's going to be enough. I hope so. Otherwise, I'm going to have to block the snot out of it so that it fits her. It's supposed to have no ease. So anyway, that's the back. I have to color code the rest of them because there are 2. The front has 2 cables in the front. Let me see if I can find a picture. Here you go. 2 cables in the front. And then there are little cables on the shoulders too, I think. So, but it's worsted weight, so it seems to be going pretty quickly. My hope is we are going to visit the kids in Florida. Isabel has her spring break, and we're going down to be childcare. Spend some time with our Isabel and Sammy. And my hope is, if I can get this done before we go, I would like to, and take it to my mom so that she has it, because she is feeling cold and needs another layer. So this was weird. Maybe I've never knit from a ball that's wound like this. Is that possible? Because I was shocked to find that there's foam in between here. In the middle. So like it's a little foam donut that has had the yarn wrapped around it. That surprised me. But I have lots of these. So I will have more than enough to make my mother the Angostura by Isolde de Teague. But that's not what it's called. Hold on. I can't read my writing. Angostura. Angostura. So this has some really nice patterns in it. Little Red in the City. And she is very, very size conscious. All of her patterns run the gamut of sizes. Like this vest runs from a size 30 to a size 60 bust. I mean, that's pretty nice range. And she uses a plus size model. She models herself, and then she has a plus size model modeling the bigger sizes so that you can have a good idea of what it's going to look like, which I also really like. So that is my my knitting. I have some goodies. besides the beautiful bag that Karen sent me, I also ordered a bag. This is a kind of a knitting tote bag from Darn Yarn MN. She posted this on Instagram, and I'm like, okay, I gotta have it. So it's a waxed canvas, and you can turn it down so that you can knit out of it like a bowl. I opted for the leather straps, which I thought were very elegant. It's got a nice pocket on the inside. It seems to be really well made. I haven't had any of the waxed canvas before, so I got the black. Anyway, I'm really happy with this, and this has all the yarn for my mom's vest in here. And the nice thing, it has a magnetic closure, although I would have put that a little higher because I feel like, well, with yarn it can go anywhere. So it's all the way down here, so it feels like I've lost a little bit of the space, but maybe not. But it also, I have a dog who likes to get in my knitting. It also has a drawstring. So I got the big size, which will be a nice purse carry-on. I could, carry on to the plane. I'm really happy with that bag. So I got 2 lovely bags since I talked to you last. My exploration station is also in my fun bag. This is the Fawn and the Fox. Laura and her husband did the wood cutting, and this is glow-in-the-dark paint. So I've had this one for quite some time, I will say. So the other thing that I bought was I bought an Acreworks Swatch Gauge, which I really loved using on my swatch to figure out my row, because I often ignore the row, to tell you the truth. I mean, I think about it sometimes, but it doesn't, it doesn't come into play a lot because I can never get the row right, but at least with the Acreworks Swatch Gauge, I am able to know that my rows are really wacky. This is why I don't want to knit things that go across, because the rows really matter then. Anyway, so that was fun, and it really helped me with my swatching, although I will admit, I did the swatch on a size 7 and said, oh, that's not going to work, and I cast it on a 6 and just went my merry way. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing my Sunset at the Beach by Marcella Chang that I knit out of fully spun yarn in the Past the Old Bay colorway, which I love. I love this sweater. I love the yarn. It was so much fun to knit. I was the test knitter for this, but Sunset at the Beach, one of my favorites. One of my favorite sweaters, I have to say. It fits me really well. One more thing I wanted to talk about before, and then we'll go to Lampworking, so this is going to be a long one, because I talked a lot in that video about Lampworking, so people are going to look at this and say, ah! But I won't talk any more knitting after the Lampworking starts, so you can just bail there. You don't have to, well, you can bail wherever you want, right? I mean, I have no control over when you bail at all. Anyway, if you follow me on Instagram, a few weeks ago, I posted a picture of a puppy. Dennis and I, when it's not super, super muddy, take Pearl to an off-leash dog park, and which she loves. She loves to run. She loves to run around, and so that's where we go, and she has a great time, and she gets lots of good exercise. And so now 3 times we've been there. Once when I wasn't there, when I was at my mom's. There's been an adorable little furball puppy who was a cross between a Newfoundland and a poodle, which I call a Noodle, which I think, of course it's a Noodle. It's got to be a Noodle. It is the cutest dog. Oh my gosh, she is so adorable. She's about 12 weeks old. And Pearl just plays with her so wonderfully. And oh my gosh, they have such a good time. And Pearl runs, and she just runs just fast enough that the puppy chases her, but doesn't catch her. And then she turns around and and goes into the play stance. And anyway, they are just so adorable together. So I walked out of there saying to Dennis, I want a Noodle. And so I started looking up Noodles, and there are Noodles not that far from me. And the Noodle that I posted is a really cute Noodle, but the timing is not good for a Noodle because we're going to Florida in a couple of weeks. So, and then we're going on a trip. We're going to be gone for 2 weeks in May, which I'll tell you about in another episode. So the timing is not good for a Noodle, but we're going to be home for quite a while after that. And so we're thinking about getting a puppy at the end of May, which would be almost exactly 2 years after we got Pearl. Pearl, the rascal dog. So she can teach this puppy how to be a rascal dog, which I'm sure she will. I don't know what I'm thinking, but this puppy was so cute, and Pearl needs somebody to play with. So a Newfoundland is a huge dog. So a Noodle is this little Noodle. The owner said that he expected her to be somewhere between 80 and 120 pounds when she was full grown. And Pearl is 88 pounds now. So that means a potential like 200 pounds of dog in the house, which is a lot of dog. Newfoundlands are really, really lovely dogs. They have wonderful temperament. They're very lovable, very loyal, and sweet. Really super sweet. My only problem with a Newfoundland is it drools. It's one of the drooly dogs. And their mouths are constructed in such a way. I mean, they're a sea rescue dog. So they, the idea is that they'll jump in the water and grab the sailor that goes overboard and they rescue people out of the ocean. That's what they were bred for, which is one of the reasons why they're so big. And so their mouths are designed in such a way that they can be holding someone in their mouth with their mouth open and in an ocean. And so their mouths are designed so that the water will just flow out of their mouth. And, because seawater is not good for dogs. So the ocean will flow out of their mouth, and so will their slobber, which is why they're a drooly dog. But they're really lovely dogs. And so a Newfoundland Poodle cross, and it's amazing how many dogs they're crossing with a poodle these days, because poodles have some really good traits. They're very smart, so the puppy will likely be smart, probably smarter than a Newfoundland. Not that I don't think Newfoundlands are dumb dogs, but they'll be a Noodle would be probably a little bit smarter. Very likely that it wouldn't shed and it would need to be clipped like a poodle is. That's often why people cross with a poodle, so that they don't have if they then there's less fur around the house and people are less likely to be allergic to them. But also a Noodle in theory won't drool. So we're going for a big dog. So our hope is this is just a smart Newfoundland that doesn't drool. That's what we're hoping for. Obviously, whatever we get is what we get. Because she'll be whatever she is. We're looking for a female. And, somebody for Pearl to play with. This is going to happen sometime in May, and, I might change my mind. Because the reality is I want that Noodle that we play with at the park, and she's already taken. Because she's so adorable and cute, and Pearl plays with her so well. But I'm sure Pearl would play with any other puppy really well. So the question is, would the new puppy play well with Pearl? And we won't know that until we get one. So we're thinking about getting a Noodle. And if we decide against a Noodle, then we'll probably go back to the same breeder and get another German Shepherd. Because aside from the rascal factor, which is prominent in Pearl's personality, I had to yell at her. She got up on the table today to take something off to take it outside because she was mad at Dennis because he left today without her. She thought she was going to go for a walk with him and he was going to the store. So she got mad. So she was going to go take something off the table and take it outside. Dennis had to rescue my fingerless glove the other day. It was out in the snow. And he rescued one of my knitting bags that was out in the snow. So, other than that, and she's not destroying these things now. She's just taking them outside just because she's mad at us. So she's not destructive anymore. I mean, when she was a puppy, she was chewing things up. She's really not doing that anymore. She doesn't go, well, she took my fingerless glove, so she, you know, but mainly she doesn't go after my knitted stuff. Even when she goes after my knitting, she's only going after the yarn balls and not what I've already knit. Anyway, she's just trained me to keep my house a little cleaner. Speaking of which, screw you, Juanita. My friend Juanita keeps asking me, how's your room coming, Barb? Is it cleaner? No, my room is not cleaner than the last time. It is actually worse. This is one of my New Year's resolutions, to straighten up my room. I would probably feel better if I was working on my room, but because I don't feel that great, I'm not working on my room. It's a downward spiral that I need to work on. But anyway, but I am keeping my little tiny journal up to date. I think I've only missed one day. So I have a little tiny journal that only has 3 lines for each day, and so I write a little tweet about the day, just what's been going on that day. And I have kept up with that, but the room, Juanita, the room is a mess. Ha, I know. Screw you, Juanita. Not really. Juanita's a lovely woman. She's sitting in her chair laughing now. I promise you. I promise you. So anyway, so that's the news for me. I'll stop talking because maybe I should just put that up as a separate video. I was going to do that originally. Maybe I should just do that. Because otherwise this one's going to be really, really long. I don't know what I'm going to decide about that. So if this doesn't have Lampworking at the end of it, it's because I decided to just put a separate Lampworking video. I did record that assuming it was going to be a separate video. So maybe I will just do that. So because this is already 50 minutes long. So maybe I'm just going to have a separate, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll decide soon. So I'm going to say goodbye. I was going to say goodbye now anyway. So if I tack on Lampworking on the end of this, then it's going to be a long video and I'm saying goodbye in the middle. Otherwise, stay tuned because there's going to be a Lampworking video because I'll edit that now too. And put that up. But maybe I'll just do that separately. I had done it, you know, when I recorded it, I assumed it would be separate. So maybe I'll just do that separate. But I'm not going to start over at the beginning of this podcast and say that. I'll just put it, you know, how they do. Like when they people change their mind in the middle of their recording their podcast, that's what I've changed my mind. I'm going to put it up separately so that this isn't too long. So anyway. I'm so glad to be back and I really am feeling better. This Isolde Teague vest is making me smile while I knit it. That cable detail is going to be a little bit like a Celtic sort of thing going on. I'm really liking that, and I hope I can get it finished in time to take it to my mom before I go to Florida, because then she'll get good use out of it. So anyway, I hope you have lots and lots of time to do the crafting that brings you joy, and I will try to do another podcast before we leave for Florida. I really want to do that because otherwise it's going to be a month. So I will try to do that. And I'll put up that Lampworking video because right now I think I'm pretty sure it's not going to go attached to this. So anyway, bye everybody. Happy knitting.